This video covers notes 13.2 about writing quadratic equations in vertex form. So the first one is the bell work, and they ask us write the equation of a line with a slope of 2 and goes through the point 2, negative 2 in point slope form. This technically says from, but I'm sure they meant form. So first point slope form on our formula chart, we look and it's y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And then my points have already been labeled, x1 and y1. And then my slope is 2. So wherever I see m, I'm going to replace m with 2. Where I see y1, I'm going to replace y1 with negative 2. And where I see x1, I'm going to replace it with 2. And everything else will stay the same. And then I'm just going to clean it up just a little bit. So y minus minus is really plus. And then nothing to clean up on the right side. So that is in point slope form, and we just cleaned it up a little bit. So vertex form of a quadratic function is f of x equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k, and is like the point slope form of linear equations. So this means the vertex of the parabola is h comma k. So notice that it's the opposite. So just like in point slope form we do minus y1 and minus x1, we also do minus h. So in parentheses is the opposite. Then the line x equals h is the axis of symmetry for that parabola. Max or min is k, so we use this to know if it's a maximum or a minimum. And then the a value is the steepness and stretch as well as the direction. So for problem 1, they've asked us to use vertex form to answer the following. So my vertex in vertex form, remember this is always the opposite. So 3 turns into a negative 3. K is just as written, so negative 5 is just rewritten. And then my axis of symmetry comes off of that, so my axis of symmetry is x equals negative 3. So if I were to graph that, that would go to the left and down. It doesn't have to be perfect, we're just doing kind of a rough sketch. Then a is a positive 1, so a positive 1 means my graph is going to be a minimum. It's a nice happy graph, so it's going to be up and down. So a is 1, so that means my graph is going to go up on the left and the right. And then domain of all quadratics is always all reals. So that one's just going to be a quick all reals. So problem 2, we have our vertex opposite and the same. So 1 and then 4. So my min or max value, this is kind of tight. So my this one is going to be a maximum because it's a positive 4. So I'm going to go to the right one and up 4. My a value is a negative 3. Negative means it is sad, so that's where max really comes from. So my parabola is sad. It's going to be a little bit steeper, and we're going to get into that in the next unit. And then my range is my y value. So my y's start at that value of 4, and then they go down from there, so my y's are less than or equal to 4. So on page 2, problem 3, they've asked us for the vertex. So my vertex is negative 3, negative 1. And remember that vertex is where you would stand on a mountain or sit in a swing. My a value, this one's a little weird, and we're going to get into this more in the next unit. But my a value, normally when you have a vertex, you go right 1, up 1. So your a value when a is 1 goes 1, 1. So this function, we go to the right 1, but we go down 2. So that means my a value is at 2, and this is upside down, so we're going a negative 2. So we're going down 2. So when I'm looking at these, my answer choices, A and B are out because of the stretch or shrink, that A value. And then remember, my vertex is always listed as the opposite. for the first one. So if I have a -3, my equation needs to have a +3, which marks out answer choice D. Problem 4, my vertex is at -3, -2. That is the lowest point on that graph. My A value from point to point, we go 1, 1. So my A value is 1. So A value is kind of like a slope. So this equation would be AX minus H. So minus minus would give me a plus squared plus K. So remember, H is the opposite, but K is the same. Doing something similar on problem 5. So my vertex is 1, 4, because that would be the tallest point on the mountain. And then my A value, we go over 1, down 2. So my A value is a -2. So my equation would be -2x minus 1 squared plus 4. Because remember that that whatever's in parentheses should be the opposite sign. And we're good to go from